Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled to have you here today. If you're someone who is completely fascinated by the unknown, well, you are in exactly the right place. We're actually doing something a little bit different today. We're going to skip our usual agenda breakdown entirely, because I just want to jump straight into this incredible global expedition. So pack your virtual bags, because we are heading to 6 of the most bewildering, eerie, and downright baffling locations on the planet.
Because really, think about it. What actually happens when the Earth completely defies our logical understanding? It's a pretty wild question, right? We like to think we have the whole world mapped out, tracked by satellites, and perfectly wrapped up by modern science. But as you're going to see in this explainer, there is a very real, very eerie anthology of locations out there where reality and myth just violently collide. We're talking about places where things vanish into thin air, behave impossibly, or just stubbornly refuse to give up their secrets.
All right, mystery number 1, the island that vanished. The mystery of Bermeja. So, we are starting off in the Gulf of Mexico, just off the north coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. Now, it's one thing for an island to just be some tiny obscure dot on a map. But back in the 16th century, Spanish cartographer Alonso de Chavez didn't just mark it down, he actually noted that from a distance, the island looked blondish or reddish, which is absolutely crucial because it proves early explorers were giving distinct physical characteristics to this landmass. To them, it wasn't just a rumor, it was a tangible, highly visible place. But over the centuries, you can literally trace how this documented landmass just slowly vanished from human reality. Look at the timeline here. In 1539, it's officially listed. By the mid-1800s, mapmakers start casually noting that it appears to be sinking. In 1921, we see its final appearance in a Mexican geographic atlas. And then, jump all the way to 2009. Investigators head out there armed with state-of-the-art ultrasound technology, and they scan the ocean floor. And what do they find? Nothing. Absolutely nothing but a sandy ocean bottom. It was literally as if Bermeja had never existed in the first place.
So where on earth did it go? Well, you've got a whole spectrum of theories trying to explain the impossible here. On one hand, you have high-stakes political intrigue. Back in the late 90s, the US and Mexico were negotiating oil drilling boundaries, right? And if Bermeja actually existed, Mexico's claims would extend significantly. When it couldn't be found, and a Mexican senator who was pushing for the island mysteriously died in a car crash, this massive theory spread like wildfire that the CIA just blew the island up. But taking a step back and looking objectively, science and history definitely offer some more grounded, but honestly just as fascinating explanations. Maybe a massive underwater landslide swallowed it whole. Or, and this is probably my favorite historical theory, Spanish explorers entirely faked it as a strategic decoy to throw off rival navies, and then cartographers just blindly copied the exact same error for nearly 400 years.
Moving on to number 2, Scotland's mysterious dog bridge, the tragic pull of Overtoun Bridge.
Okay, let's leave the Gulf of Mexico behind and head over to Dumbarton, Scotland, to dive into this bizarre 1895 Gothic structure. I mean, it looks like this picturesque setting for a 19th century manor, but it holds a remarkably dark secret. For the past 80 years, hundreds of dogs have inexplicably leaped into the 50-foot ravine right below this bridge. And to make it even more disturbing, there are documented reports of dogs surviving that massive fall, running right back up the slope and throwing themselves off a second time. Why on earth would man's best friend suddenly abandon all survival instincts?
Well, this sparks a super fascinating battle between superstition and science. The local myths are definitely chilling. Some claim it's a Celtic thin place where the barrier between the living and dead is blurred. Others blame the ghost of the White Lady or just dark residual energy from a horrific 1994 tragedy at the site. But in 2006, animal behaviorist David Sands made this brilliant biological breakthrough. He discovered that back in the 1950s, wild minks started breeding in the ravine. Long-nosed dogs are biologically hardwired to chase that exact scent. And here is the fatal architectural flaw of the bridge itself. It has tapered edges. So to a dog aggressively tracking a scent, that edge doesn't look like a 50-foot drop at all. It just looks like a flat running plane. So no, it's not supernatural malice. It's basically just an optical illusion mixed with an overwhelming biological drive.
All right, mystery number 3, Journey into the Earth, the Kola Superdeep Borehole. Let's shift gears and go back to the Cold War. When we think of the battle between the United States and the Soviet Union, we instantly think of the space race, right? But these superpowers were also racing straight down to the center of the Earth. The US launched Project Molehole in 1958, but they barely scratched the surface, getting to about 600 feet before it was completely canceled due to astronomical costs. But the USSR? Starting in 1970, their Kola borehole drilled down over 40,000 feet, that is 7.5 miles straight into the Earth's crust, literally deeper than the Mariana Trench and taller than Mount Everest. But eventually, they hit a wall. When they got 7.5 miles down, the temperature spiked to a shocking 360 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists had really only predicted it would be around 212 degrees. But at 360, the rock densities started shifting, the drill bits were literally melting, and the Soviets were completely blocked by the Earth's terrifying subterranean heat. The whole project eventually had to be sealed up for good. But there is this incredibly chilling cultural legacy left behind. In the 1980s, this wild rumor spread that the Soviets lowered a microphone down the hole and recorded the literal screams of the damned in hell. Okay, so that specific audio was totally debunked. It turned out to just be a sound effect loop from a 1972 horror movie. But the actual truth? It's almost as chilling. Years later, Dutch artist Lottie Guy lowered a thermal-shielded microphone into a very similar borehole in Germany. And like she said, to some it sounded like hell, but to others they could hear the planet breathe. Scientists are pretty sure it's just the massive sound of subterranean rocks rearranging themselves, but the sheer auditory power of the deep Earth, it remains incredibly, incredibly haunting.
Mystery number 4. Siberia's unexplained crater, the enigma of Patomskiy.
Picture this. It's 1949, and a Russian geologist is out on the frozen surface of Irkutsk, Siberia, when he suddenly stumbles upon a massive anomaly in the absolute middle of nowhere. It's this 500-foot-wide crater with a strange 40-foot hill right in the dead center. Now, the locals, they do not call it the Patomskiy Crater, they call it the Fire Eagle Nest. It's this super ominous nickname for a site they genuinely warn possesses dark powers and will kill anyone who enters, which, sounds like pure folklore until the superstitions exploded into absolute panic in 2005. The leader of a major scientific expedition tragically suffered a fatal heart attack shortly after investigating the site.
So what on earth actually created this thing? Well, science has methodically gone through and rejected a whole host of popular theories. They found zero volcanic rock, tests showed absolutely no evidence of nuclear explosions, which totally dismantles the wild internet rumors about underground nuclear plants or crashed UFOs. They even ruled out a meteorite impact. What makes it even weirder is that the trees near the crater grow abnormally fast, kind of like the forests around Chernobyl. But scientists have finally zeroed in on a highly plausible explanation. They think the mound was caused by the slow, underground release of hydrogen fluids and heat from a deeply buried gas volcano. That subterranean off-gassing would perfectly explain the rapid tree growth, too. It's such an incredible reminder of just how active and dynamic the Earth is right beneath our feet.
Bringing us to Section 5, Reclaimed by Nature, Viaduct Petrobras and Villa Epecuén. I love grouping these final two locations together because they so perfectly illustrate what happens when these hyper-ambitious human engineering projects are just swallowed whole by the relentless force of nature. First, take the Viaduct Petrobras in Brazil. This was supposed to be this massive highway cutting straight through the deep jungle. But an economic crisis hit, the routing was changed, and boom, a 1,000-foot-long, 130-foot-tall concrete behemoth was just left there, abandoned. Today, it's entirely engulfed by the rainforest. Now contrast that with Villa Epecuén down in Argentina. This wasn't some unfinished project, this was a bustling, luxurious weekend getaway town for the elite. But in 1985, their containment dam failed during a massive storm. The water rose half an inch every single hour for 2 weeks until the entire town was buried under 30 feet of salt water. Fast forward 25 years later, in 2009, when the waters finally began to recede, what emerged was just unimaginable. It literally looks like a dystopian movie set. Because it was a salt lake, the water stripped the life from the town and coated the dead trees, the rusted cars, the collapsed roofs, everything in this ghostly, thin, white salt residue. It is a striking, post-apocalyptic ghost town that draws photographers from all around the globe today. But out of this entire tragedy, there's one detail that is just absolutely staggering. Out of the 1,500 residents who fled those rising waters back in 1985, guess how many returned? Exactly one. A single 81-year-old man named Pablo Novak moved back into the salty ruins of his hometown in 2009. He lived entirely alone among the rubble, acting as the town's sole inhabitant, until he passed away at the age of 93. I mean, can you even imagine? Which brings us to a final, sort of haunting thought to wrap up our explainer today. Given everything we've just seen, from islands that literally vanish into thin air, to ancient forests swallowing massive concrete highways, and super deep boreholes unleashing the crazy sounds of the deep, What other forgotten secrets is the Earth still hiding right beneath our feet? It really just goes to show, no matter how advanced our technology becomes, our planet is still wild, it's unpredictable, and it is deeply, deeply mysterious. Thank you so much for joining me on this expedition today. And hey, keep questioning what you see on the map.